by Chael Sonnen. Chael, how you doing, man?
Me never better. How's yourself? That's what matters.
You know what? I'm doing fantastic, man. I appreciate you asking. Hey, let's get right into it. We don't have that much time, but we got to talk about UFC 254. From top to bottom, I love this fight card. Obviously, we're discussing Khabib and Gaethje. There's something poetic, Chael, I think, about two guys who seem to be blue-collar, not flashy, don't really give you the great sound bites, but they let their skill sets do the talking. How excited are you for this fight coming up?
Yeah, these guys are special. You know, I love the interim championships. Some guys don't like that. They think they're a placeholder. I understand that. I just think there's time for a placeholder. And by the way, Justin Gaethje went and grabbed it. So now when you're putting him against Khabib, the undisputed champion, both guys walk out there with 12 pounds of gold that claim that they're the best in the same weight class. That doesn't work. Two guys can't be number one at the same time. We're going to figure this out the hard way, and that's on Saturday.
Chael, I'm surprised because if you look at the odds right now, and listen, I'm not much of a betting man when it comes to fighting because anything can happen in that octagon. But when I see Justin Gaethje, I see some places have him plus 250, some have him plus 300 right now. And that's shocking to me because this is a fight of identities. We know what Khabib is going to do. And we know what Justin Gaethje is going to do. The thing with Justin Gaethje, though, obviously he has the wrestling to back it up, right? Khabib, probably the greatest grappler of all time in mixed martial arts. Going against Justin Gaethje, who's an All-American. And for those casual MMA fans out there, yeah, that's pretty good. But we've never really seen Justin Gaethje use his wrestling before. He's more of a pressure fighter, use his leg kicks, get in your face a little bit. How do you see this fight shaking out?
Okay, so I love the point that you're bringing up because Khabib, while we watch him on TV, is this fantastic wrestler, but he doesn't actually have the resume behind him. He doesn't actually have an amateur career where he put on a singlet and there was a referee and put your foot on the line and your opponent will do the same. I bring that to you because I do concede that Justin Gaethje does not use his wrestling offensively, but I want to remind you he never gets taken down. He's still using that wrestling. He just uses it defensively. And the one thing about Khabib, we've seen rinse and repeat, fight after fight, championship after championship, round after round, but he takes people down. Khabib has never beaten anybody that he hasn't gotten on top of first, and I've never seen anybody get on top of Justin Gaethje. So to use both of their histories as a way of projecting their futures, I think you've got a very interesting match here. Khabib's got to get on top of a guy who nobody's ever gotten on top of.
You know, and it's a great point. It's kind of a clash of styles a little bit. And listen, styles are one thing, but listen, and I'm an MMA fighter myself, and we talked about that a little bit in Miami when I met you. But to be fair, this game, it's probably more mental than it is physical. Now, I don't enjoy bringing this part up, but I think it's going to be a huge part of the fight. And regrettably, I got to do it. But with Khabib, obviously, he lost his father a couple months ago. And when you talk about Khabib's father, you talk about a guy who essentially taught him how to wrestle, who's been in his corner for a lot of fights. And I think that professional athletes, more than anything, they're creatures of habit, right? So this was a different fight camp, obviously, for Khabib. This is going to be a different walk to the octagon for Khabib. And one of two things can happen, I feel like. Either he's going to use that as motivation, and we'll see a brand new Khabib, even better, faster, stronger than before, or we see a guy who's just not all there. What Khabib do you think is going to show up here, Chael?
And I think you're very well within your lane to bring that up, and I agree with you. It's a sensitive topic, but it is very relevant to this fight. Khabib's relationship with his father is something that was very public, and we all knew, and it has a bit of a Rocky-esque feel to it. It has a bit of a Mike Tyson Cusamoto feel to it. And I think that you've hit it on the head. I also see it as you see it. This is either going to be a pick-me-up or a bring-me-down. We know how strong Khabib is, right? But how mentally tough is he? This is a mental drill. He's never passed. He's never failed to pass a mental exercise. I think he's going to pass this one, but I do agree with you. It's going to be a different Khabib. It's either going to be one out there fighting for nostalgia, for respect, for honor towards his father, or it's just going to overcome him. And I don't judge him either way, but I think that you're right to bring it up because I do think it's a meaningful storyline. We always talk about this with athletes, about the focus and the mental side of it. Imagine being in Khabib's spot. It's very sad, it's very trying, but he is going to push forward either way, and I respect that.
We got a few more questions here for Chael Sonnen regarding UFC 254. Chael, so you know what they say. You're only as good as your last fight, right? And if I look at, if I look at Justin Gaethje's last fight, we had him on the show, and he did his thing against Tony Ferguson. It was a masterclass performance against a very tough individual. And if that showed us anything, it showed us that Justin Gaethje, regardless of who he's going against, whether it's El Kakui now or Khabib coming up, he's not afraid of anybody. And he essentially walked down the barrel that is Tony Ferguson and said, listen, I got the cardio, I have the violence in my hands, and I'm going to show you what I'm all about. And he passed with flying colors. And Khabib, the same thing I can think with Dustin Poirier. But I want to go 2 fights back, and I'm not sure if I should be doing this or not, but I want to talk about Al Iaquinta versus Khabib. During that fight, Khabib obviously mauled him. He got on top of him, and Al Iaquinta is no slouch in himself. A very tough individual, a great wrestler with decent striking. Towards that 5th round, Al Iaquinta started to get off just a little bit. Now, he didn't win the fight, obviously, but we saw Khabib, we saw him be human for once, right? And we saw a guy who was undefeated actually show, man, this guy's taking some punches right now. So as I fast forward to this fight now, Chael, I see Justin Gaethje being a buffed up, a better version of Al Iaquinta. Is that a fair comparison or not?
I think you're going down the right road. And the one thing that we did learn in that fight is most fighters and most of the greats do have more than one thing they can do, but they all have their clear favorite. They have their clear game plan. With Khabib, it's to get on top. And when Khabib gets on top and you get up, you're now different. You're not the same guy. He will bludgeon you, but he will also take so much energy from you. You're just not the same. Al Iaquinta was very smart in that he didn't go to the fence. Khabib does everything, but is with the same setup, if you will. Okay, he does not just take somebody down. He pressures them, he puts them in the fence, then he takes them down. If you can keep your back off the fence, exponentially your chances of not being taken down go up. And Justin Gaethje is, I think many of us have identified this, but Justin is the first publicly to verbalize it. So I know at least that Justin knows at least he got to stay off the fence. It's not about the shot, the takedown, or the trips. It's about where it happens. Nothing happens with Khabib until he pushes you into the fence. And that's what Al Iaquinta did so well, which is why he was able to stay on his feet and find some very good moments. I don't concede, like some people, that Khabib looked terrible in the stand-up. I will just concede that he looks better when he's on top. And I think if your overarching point here is to say that Justin Gaethje may be the one guy to force him onto the feet because he can't get on top, I agree with you.
We got 2 more questions here for Chael Sonnen, then we'll let him go real quick. But, Chael, I got to ask you, and Khabib, listen, I think his striking has improved. We saw that against Conor McGregor, right? But let's be honest here. It's because of his wrestling and people's fear of that. It's why his striking has got so much better. Now, listen, you dropped Conor McGregor, and I have to give you props for that. I look at the UFC and the landscape right now, and I watch the evolution of it. And it's called mixed martial arts for a reason, right? You just can't be versed in one thing. You kind of have to be the jack of all trades, if you will. But to me, Khabib is one of those sole guys that can be good at one thing, dictate it, and win. I mean, heck, the guy's undefeated, for crying out loud. I compare him, and there's another guy by the name of Damian Maia, who is obviously a jiu-jitsu black belt, who relies a lot on his jiu-jitsu to get the job done. Those are really the only 2 guys that I can think of who really just bring one thing to the sport of MMA. I guess my question to you is, are these kind of are these 2 pioneers in terms of just that one thing in MMA where they're going to go away and we're never going to see that again? Or will we see more dominant wrestlers with, okay, striking? Or will we see that jiu-jitsu guy where that's all that he does?
I think it's rare and rare that you see a specialist. I think it's rare and rare that you see a guy who has one skill, but he's perfected it so much that even going against a guy that's okay at that skill, he can still dominate him. We don't. George St. Pierre would come to mind where he could throw everybody down. Or in the reverse of this is Francis Ngannou, who appears to be a bit of a one-trick pony with his just a couple of good left and right hands. But the bottom line is, I still do appreciate those guys. Those guys can take one thing. Everybody knows it's coming. Kind of like Babe Ruth, who walks to the mound and says where he's going to put the ball. It's no secret. He puts it there anyway. I think it's special. But to your point, they are fewer and further between.
All right, Joe, one last question for you, man. I had to ask you. I'm not sure if you can comment on it or not. Who do you have winning this fight?
I have Khabib. I think it's going to be a long fight. I think they're likely to go all night long. But it is pretty straightforward. It's just like what Justin Gaethje said. If I can kick him 4 times, I can change him. If he can take me down 1 time, he will change me. I take him at his word. I think Khabib's going to get that takedown.
Chael Sonnen, man, I appreciate you stopping by. It's great to hear from you again. You're always welcome on our show, man. Open door policy.
You're awesome. Thanks, brother.
Thank you, man. Khabib Justin Gaethje goes down this Saturday. Once again, I think it starts at 2 p.m. We're talking to Ariel Helwani here in a little